Hello, and welcome to Show Some Skin Exposed. My name is Teresa Azamar, and I am this year's Executive Director. On behalf of this year's cast, crew, and production team, I'd like to thank you all in advance for opening up your hearts and your minds to the stories we have to share with you today. Today, I invite you to think about exposure. There is a reality that you know and no one else does. You are a living, breathing expose. You serve as a witness to the world around you and to yourself. In the fall, we asked, how much are you really willing to disclose? What is the danger in leaving yourself exposed? When is it better to keep the mask on? And when is vulnerability worth the risk? You answered. The anonymously submitted stories that we are about to share with you today are equally rooted in criticism of the systems at play at our university and the world, as they are in hope for positive change. 10 years ago, Show Some Skin was founded at the University of Notre Dame with the mission to uplift stories of identity and difference in our campus community and our greater South Bend community. Now in our 10th production, we hope to uphold that mission. We've asked you to show us your skin and perhaps go deeper. From your own experience, what does exposure mean for you? Show us the difference between the world you know and the world we see. Expose to us what can be hidden no longer. Thank you.
Welcome. My name is Tess Goshi, and I have the distinct honor of serving as the executive producer of Show Some Skin Exposed. When we began planning for this show almost a year ago, I continuously would ask myself and my team how our world would change by the time an audience would have the chance to hear our performance in the spring. In September, we asked the Notre Dame community, comprised of students, faculty, and staff, about exposure. They responded with countless stories that comprised the Notre Dame experience. The leadership team had the honor of reading every single one of these stories, but we couldn't include them all due to the overwhelming volume of excellent stories. Although our world has changed a lot since these monologues were written, and even more so since we began planning this show, Show Some Skin has continued to expose stories that often go unheard. Through this, the show has continued to honor its original mission written almost a decade ago. Every year, we like to reiterate that the stories you will hear shortly are not necessarily those of the actors performing them. To those actors, thank you for the hard work that you've done with us to craft an authentic show, one that is honest and truthful to the monologues that were written. To our faculty advisors, Dr. Cecilia Lucero, Nicole McLaughlin, and Eric Love, and to our leadership team, thank you for helping us create a show beyond our wildest dreams. To all those who took the time to honestly pour out their hearts to us, thank you for trusting us with your stories. Please know that without your stories and your honesty, we would be unable to even have a show. To all those who have the opportunity to listen tonight to these amazing stories, we ask that you open yourself to exposure, because only through that can you begin to understand that this place is full of people who feel broken. But please know that you're never beyond repair. Thank you.
When do I feel exposed? When your skin's not white, you're always exposed. You always stick out. Everything you do, everything that surrounds you, can be tied into the color of your skin. Good grade on that exam? Asians are smart tryhards. Anal about cleanliness. Oh yeah, they probably had a tiger moth. Posting all over social media about racial injustice? They're not even black. What do they care? Asians only get positive stereotypes anyway. Oh wait, but this is all assuming that the masses can tell you're Asian, or if asked in the worst way possible about your ethnicity and find out you're Asian. Until they know you're Asian, you get to live by a different set of stereotypes and prejudices about brown people in general. Are you Mexican? Indian? Native American? Wow, you must never get sunburned. You have such beautiful coloring. If you married a white person, your mixed kids would be so cute. Please, white people, tell me more about what my brown skin does for me in my life. Because last I checked, I'd opt to be white over brown any day of the week. Not because I'm ashamed of my heritage, but because I'm sick of being constantly so exposed in our race-obsessed society. When your skin isn't white, it doesn't matter who you are. It matters what people see. And in that way, it's impossible to be anything but exposed.
It really sucks questioning your gender at Notre Dame. It feels like an endless shitty game of chutes and ladders. Some days I come across an article that makes you feel seen and think I'm a little closer to self-acceptance. Other days I have conversations with friends who don't understand people who don't fit the binary and how the word they can be singular. And I slide right back to where I was. The Notre Dame experience is gendered from the moment we find out what dorms we're living in. What about people who don't think they fit in their dorm, but also don't fit in another gender's dorm? There's no room for us here. It's hard to make any progress because when I'm surrounded by cisgender heterosexuals for most of the time, I can't figure out if I'm different because of my sexuality or my gender too. It's restraining to be here. Like I can't fully grow into the best version of myself because of the fear of others. Loud voices believe God gave me this body for a reason. God also gave me this mind with these thoughts. Didn't he? I just want to be myself, like everyone else, and not be worried about every move I make. It really sucks to feel alone in this. I don't know any non-binary people to turn to or vent to. People listen, but I just want to be understood and heard. I love parts of Notre Dame, but the lack of queer people has been suffocating and exhausting. I don't want to be othered on a daily basis. I don't deserve to be othered. I, as well as every other student here, should be accepted and celebrated. But being gay has been othering enough. Why would being non-binary make things any better? The only solution I can come up with is to trudge along and accept the daily misgendering until I graduate and can find whole spaces that are affirming and help me figure out things. Not just small pockets in a larger normative institution like this. There has to be a better solution to this. There must be a better solution to this. I wish I could see a better solution to this. It really sucks questioning your gender at Notre Dame.
I am not a racist. My best friend is black. I'm not a racist. I'm just conservative. These words have echoed to the ears of every person of color in America. In my first-year Moreau class, a young man yelled these words in a discussion of diversity and privilege. I can still hear the words, "I am not a racist. I voted for Donald Trump because I am conservative." To his surprise, and to the surprise of many, I agree. I don't think you're a racist, a white supremacist, a Klan member, etc. Yet. Your opposition to affirmative action doesn't make you a racist. Your conservative values don't make you a racist. Your vote for Donald Trump in 2016 doesn't even make you a racist. You might not be a racist, but your beliefs, values, and political support have the same effect. You've arrived at the same conclusion as racists. You support many of the same policies as racists. You stand with racists. Racists think you're a racist. Your choice to climb to the top of the fence and set up camp supports racism. Your blind-eye to the experiences of people of color on campus and around the world supports racism. Your decision to play devil's advocate for the devil himself supports racism. Your justification of institutional racism supports racism. You, whether you like it or not, are upholding racism. So no, I don't think you're a racist, but that doesn't matter when you're causing the same harm. It doesn't matter because you fit the description.
How can I sleep peacefully at night, knowing that the true monster in the dark is the white liberals who smile pleasantly to my face, but turn around and deny or refuse to acknowledge their own racist acts? Or with the knowledge that over 74 million people could care less about the humanity of others? And the even scarier fact that some of them walk among us.
You know the moment, right before you fall asleep, when all your problems become real again? When the weight of the world sits itself down on your chest? When the sky turns blue and black, and the stars won't shine because who are you to deserve them? When every word you've said teams up with every word you didn't to strike you down in the ways only you know how. When everyone in the world that loves you is one phone call away and you can't press call. And you don't fall asleep. And you don't wake up. And no one asks. And you don't share. And it's fine. You eat your breakfast and go to work or school or don't. You smile at the people and pretend to like coffee and act like today is just Tuesday. You go home and fall like a cinder block of exhaustion on the bed that you didn't make this morning. You close your eyes and the world starts to fade and you find yourself here again. Again. The moment right before you fall asleep.
The closet fills with toxic gas. I think that if I recede further into it, the gas will stop suffocating. It only suffocates more. I venture toward the door, but I wonder if outside I will walk into a room filled with lethal gas. I am trapped. The longer I spend in the closet, the more I hurt those that I love. They don't understand why I'm pulling away, but I do. I know all too well why I am pulling away. I am stuck in the paradox of this closet. I'm damned if I do and damned if I don't. Staying in the closet erodes my relationships, but exposing myself may explode them. Is it better to watch them slowly slip away or watch them rip themselves away from me? Disordered, unorthodox, faggot. I have taken it upon myself to throw my partner out of my closet. She had already escaped hers. Why would I let her shrivel from my toxic gas? If we were to walk out of my closet together, would we make it out? No, I will not risk that. I will not risk her. I will struggle for breath on my own. I sink onto the floor of the closet to feet. As I lay in anguish, I pray for courage. I don't pray to the God that calls me disordered. I pray to the God that affirms the love of my life. I hope to God that when I leave the closet, the air will clear and I will be able to breathe again. I don't deserve her anymore after the way I threw her out. Maybe now that the toxic air has cleared, I can find myself back to her.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but joking about killing ourselves? It's not funny. It's cheap humor. Come on, guys. We go to Notre Dame. I think we're smart enough to come up with a better punchline than I'm going to kill myself.
I'm not sure if I did kill myself for my own sake or because I knew the monetary costs that came with suicide would make my mom have to work weekends too. She had to go back to work only a month after giving birth to my brother. I didn't want her to miss out on any more of his childhood than she already had, and I didn't want him to miss out on any more of the happy moments with our parents, because I prayed those happy moments would outweigh the scary things that he saw, that he would see in our home. I'm not sure if I was really suicidal because I never talked about it. I never tried to get help. I mean, in the moments where everything felt okay, where I felt okay, I convinced myself that I was just faking it for attention, especially when I started to cut myself. No. You know what? I did want attention, all right? I wanted somebody to see that I was broken and crying for help, but whenever anybody did see, they told me that I was spoiled, that I just complained. I had so much to be grateful for, and all I did was complain. So, yeah, I stopped cutting, but the scars are still there. The knife I used is still in my desk, and whenever I'm not sure if I was faking it, I take it out and I hold it. And I remember that I was broken and that I needed help. And you know what? I remember lying on the floor of my bedroom, terrified, even wishing I had never even existed in the first place. I mean, killing myself had consequences, right? If I disappeared, nobody would notice the difference. Just the world I lived in back at home was terrifying. Every move I made had to be careful and quiet. Mistakes meant yelling, shattered plates on the floor, slamming doors. I was terrified I would have to exist the rest of my life in a world like that. I'd rather not exist at all. But I'm relieved I still exist. Relieved that despite everything, something kept me alive. Because now I get to exist in a better world. I mean, ever since leaving home, I've gotten to experience a world in which my mistakes don't
and with furniture being broken or somebody being beaten. And I'll admit, it was a weird transition at first. I mean, for the first couple of months, I felt the need to get permission for every single little thing that I did. I flinched at loud noises and nearly had a panic attack if somebody raised their voice at me, but just being able to walk out of my room without a sense of dread in every step, it felt like an accomplishment. And over time, I became more comfortable in breaking the boundaries and the old rules that kept me safe back at home. I started exploring a world in which my mistakes weren't used to justify abuse, because that's what it was. It was abuse. And where my existence, it felt like it mattered, where it does matter. Because you see, I fell in love with the person I got to be in this world. And I'm so eternally grateful for whatever kept me from killing myself. Because it let me live to see a world like this.
Estimated date of me falling apart, early April 2020. Length of fall, endless. When I have panic attacks, I feel like I can't breathe. My throat feels choked. I can't catch my breath. And no matter how deeply I breathe, it's like my lungs are a deep void that will never fill. My body shakes uncontrollably and feels hot. I cry. I feel tingly and distant, like I've been hijacked as a human and will never be normal again. My brain shuts off completely, and I feel like I will fall into this pit legitimately until I die. I never do. It always ends. But it leaves me scared of myself, scared of my brain. I feel broken, even crazy sometimes. I mean, I'm literally fighting with myself. I worry about what would happen if I lose control. If I panic in public, if I can do the things I used to do, if I'm still me. When we first left campus in March, I was wildly optimistic. 2 weeks and we'll be back. 2 weeks and I'll have my stuff. 2 weeks and life will be normal again. I graciously watched March turn into April. I engaged in online classes. I worked out from home. I enjoyed my time spent with family and pets. I had a good routine, you know? I was happy. And then, in April, somewhat arbitrarily, but with the increasing weight of knowing that things weren't going back to normal, I broke. My occasional stress and tendency to worry developed literally overnight into severe generalized anxiety disorder and panic attacks. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't work out. I took to aimless walks around the neighborhood, trying to spark some sense of peace into the churning ocean that was my brain. It seemed almost magical to me that my put-together self, my straight-A student, high school valedictorian, student-athlete self, could be such a mess. I'm always on top of my shit. I know what I'm doing. I don't need help. And yet here I was, crying into my parents' arms like a young child, unable to verbalize just how terrifying my own brain felt. I constantly thought I had COVID, despite never leaving the house. I stopped focusing in school. I moved into my sister's room, desperate for any sleep I could get by drowning myself in the nostalgia of children's books and snuggles. As much as I loved my family and my friends and my home community and my university, I had to admit that I needed help. I started therapy and anxiety medication. I reached out to every mentor I could think of. I told my friends that I wasn't okay. And I started to rebuild. I celebrated small victories like sleeping in my own bed, completing slow and easy workouts, and finishing dinner. I'm still broken. Maybe I'll always be. Being back on campus, I've had to work hard to not fall into the typical college trope of being too busy and overcommitting. I'm learning to be honest about how I feel. It's all a process. Because even though I've always had backpack buttons fighting to destigmatize mental illness, and even though I've talked openly and honestly with peers about their own issues, my work ethic and identity as a good student has made it difficult for me to confront my own issues and allow others to help me. This place is less shiny underneath its outer layer. This campus is full of people who feel broken. But you are never beyond repair. I'm never beyond repair. Estimated date of me putting myself back together. End of April, 2020. Length of climb to be determined.
Turn the lights on and off. On and off. On. Off. Come on. Turn on. Come on. Turn on. Oh well. I guess I'm stuck in the dark. The bulb sure did run out of battery. Of course it would. With this high-speed switching back and forth I had to do on a daily basis. Now stay here with me, buddy. I try to convince my inner self it is almost the end of the school day, and that is the last turning on we have to do. But my inner self just wants to be stubborn. Be yourself, she whispers. It is almost the end of the school day, buddy. Please turn on. That is not convincing enough, I suppose. My tongue gets tied. My heart palpitates. I can feel the sweat underneath my clothes. Come on. It is just your Ghanaian accent. It is beautiful. If it was, why do I have to get the stare each time I try to speak? Why do I have to get the haws and what did you say for every single sentence? Right. Exactly. My teacher, who's still waiting on me to answer the question, stands perplexed. Well, I seem to be losing an intense internal battle with my inner self on why she should just turn the American accent on. For one last time. Is it water or water? Is it aluminium or Aluminum. See? If you're just turned on, we would not be going through this. Oh my gosh, why are you being so difficult today? This body just won't compromise. I slowly shook my head to my teacher to signal. I did not know the answer. But that was false. My body was tired of having to switch. Despite learning math and chemistry, I taxed myself to learn something else. An 8-hour credit course I pursued. I had to learn how to code switch. At high speed, in spontaneity, semi-precision, and with flair. Now tell me, is that the plight of every bilingual immigrant in the U.S.? Or just a student who didn't want to see more obvious than the noticeable differences? Code switching is the only way I'll be given a listen in group works. Code switching is the way I could say I am not dumb because I'm African. Code switching is the way I could say I did not live in a hut and neither the other Africans on the continent. Code switching is the medium through which I have a voice, and code switching has me drained by the end of the day. Finally, getting home to my family and turning off my internal switch for about 12 hours or more is freedom. That liberating feeling can compare to taking your nose mask off in these corona times. Code switching. I am slowly learning to let my Guinean accent live on my lips and not be bothered about being tucked in the closet. It may take a while. It really would. Anyways, that's my little expose. Time to turn off the switch again.
Dear Diary, today is May 25th, 2015. I came out for the very first time. It was weird to say aloud. Sure, it's one thing to display on the internet, but it's another to hear your feminine voice denounce your gender. Say you're not a girl when you're wearing a skirt and answering to she's and hers. The good thing is that I didn't ugly cry on the bus after. Dear Diary, it isn't as exciting to come out the second, the third, or the fourth time. It's like slowly pulling a Band-Aid off. There are more questions. Some with easy answers like, agender is when you don't identify with a particular gender. And some with hard answers like, I'm not sure when I started to feel this way. Since forever, I guess? Dear Diary, every metaphor seems to fall short of describing who I am. Born with the wrong parts is limiting. I feel like I'm setting people back a few years even thinking about that phrasing. Trapped in the wrong body is worse. It sounds so negative. Like I'm the one who made a mistake. Like I got myself wrapped up in this situation. Like it's my fault that closets feel more like coffins. And I'm just waiting to be buried alive. Dear Diary, my senior year English teacher laughs when I explain the singular form of they. He asked me if it was like the royal we. Each joke shovels more dirt on the coffin. Dear Diary, Notre Dame both exceeds and fails to meet expectations. Each day is a performance, the dorm my stage, where I play a girl who is happy to be living in a single-sex dorm. Perhaps soon I will find someone to confide in about my role. Dear Diary, how do you come out to your roommate? There are so many what ifs. What if she doesn't know what it means? What if she does know what it means and she hates that she lives with one of those? What if she hates it enough to hate me? Dear Diary, maybe sophomore year will be better. Dear Diary, where did my courage go?
It was easier to share my identity in high school. Sure, there was the initial panic of coming out, but it didn't linger like it does here. I wish parietals applied to emotions. Dear Diary, I find it difficult to trust the people around me with myself. When all the dirt piles on, will any of these friends try to dig me out? Or will they have supplied their own shovels, tossing jokes about misgendering and comments about the sensitivity of being politically correct on top of me? Dear Diary, maybe junior year will be better. Dear Diary, the issue with self-disclosure as a trans person is that I'm not sure who the self is when they're in the closet. Dear Diary, maybe senior year will be better.
God, why did you ask me to come here? I don't belong here. I'm Christian, but I'm not Catholic. I'm tired of being attacked for the thing I've built my entire identity on. Are you really, my friend, are you really going to claim that the body of Christ is a family? If you are constantly persecuting me for the small differences between my faith and yours, are you really acting out of love if you're constantly making jabs and jokes about the fact that I haven't been to a Catholic confession and I don't take communion at a Catholic mass? You're supposed to be a brother or sister in Christ. We both believe in the same God, have accepted the same Lord and Savior, and are filled with the same Holy Spirit. But some days, I question whether or not any of that is true. God, teach me how to forgive. But perhaps more importantly, teach us how to love. I don't belong here. I'm not white. When I call my Asian American friends by name, you ask why they can't just go by Emma or Gabe. You don't even try to pronounce their names, let alone acknowledge the thousands of years of history behind them. Just because you're named after some white saint doesn't give you the right to criticize anyone else's. And then you try to tell me the meaning behind my American first name? I already know it. You don't even ask me about my Asian middle or last name. And I'm not even talking about the significance, because you don't even know my middle name. Yes, you watched Mulan. Just like every other white kid in America, you watched a whitewashed, culturally inaccurate representation. That, coupled with American stereotypes, gives you the right to dismiss my identity? I don't belong here. There are so many other times you've made me feel excluded for so many other reasons. You're probably listening right now, thinking it's not me. You never realized that your offensive jokes weren't really that funny. But if I didn't laugh, I'm just someone who can't take a joke. I can. And I have. Because I love you guys. I really do. You guys are my friends. And perhaps that's the reason why I feel like I can't tell you any of this. I don't fit in. I never will.
Maybe that's what Scott's been trying to show me this entire time. Maybe that's exactly why I'm here. After all, he's always loved me just as I am. And I hope one day you will too. I hope one day your words and actions will reflect that.
There are so many people here that I wish I had met years before. But at the same time, there are so many people here that I wish I had never met at all.
As I sit down in class, 4 minutes before the end of the lecture, absent-mindedly listening to my professor, calculating the time it would take for me to quickly grab my lunch, I hear him ask, "But why are they so angry?" I wonder if he knows of the fear that dominates me every day, of the hate following me everywhere I go, the weight I carry on my shoulders, the tears I shed every day, the unshed tears threatening to come out. I wonder if he could walk through my shoes for even an hour. Does he know of the fear that paralyzes me? Fear that I may not make it back in one piece, that I will have to explain to my cousins, to my sister, and to my unborn children of how justice is never served. That I will lose one of my brothers or my sister at the hands of police, that another mother will lose a child to this violence. I wonder if he could walk through my shoes for even a day. Does he know of the anger that consumes me? Anger that as a Black woman I could be insulted, beaten down, and shot at. That my cries will not be heard by this world, that my pain will not be acknowledged by this world. That the hashtag protect Black women was in style for 5 seconds. That my life will be tied down to a statistic that I am 12 times more likely to die giving birth, because if doctors won't listen to Serena Williams' complaints, then they sure as hell won't listen to me. I wonder if he could walk through my shoes for even a week. Does he know of the rage that runs through my body? Rage that there are children without clean water. Rage that my people are dying and nothing seems to change. That we are losing hope every ticking second. That we are gaining hope. That maybe next time, justice will be served. That we even have to think of the next time. That this same body that they find hot and banging is the same body they insult, degrade, and kill. That they would kill for this body, but never die protecting it. I wonder if he could walk through my shoes for even a month. Does he know of the snide comments directed at me? Of how I have to defend myself daily? How I have to explain why my life matters? Why my heart rate skyrockets every time I hear a police siren? Of the mental illness excused as hate? Of the things missing from my history books? I wonder if he could walk through my shoes for even a year.
I guess what I learned in 2020 is that there is no limit to suffering. I learned that I can actually feel my heart tear into pieces. I felt this when my parents rejected my sister's sexuality and she called me in tears. When my dad lost his job and would drink until he cried.
When Anne Rose died, when Valeria and Olivia died, when I didn't get the job, when I didn't get to grad school, when my sister found a lump in her breast. When that boy told me he couldn't do this anymore, and I was reminded that I am alone. Heartbreak after heartbreak. And I just felt like I couldn't bear anymore. There was a point last year when I thought, this year has been so incredibly horrible that poetically something good has to happen. And then that something good didn't. And I felt broken. Therapists will tell you it's depression. But I'll tell you that I was just learning how even a broken heart can still shatter.
If the world was ending, she would run. Run. Run, never look back. Head straight into the storm of the world. She would cut her mane above the shoulders, dipped into the ocean blue. She would dance, offbeat, here and there. She would smile at everyone, not looking to see if they smiled back. She would leave town, travel to every beach and coffee shop far away. She would look in the mirror and stare without judgment, curse the Roman critics away. She would pick up the phone, call him, and say, I'm sorry, and I forgive you.
Cheer, cheer for old Notre Dame. Wake up to headlines smearing our name. Send a flare for help on high. Cowering under the public eye. What though distress be great or small? Old Notre Dame can't hear you at all. As her loyal sons and daughters march into quarantine.
You can't be your authentic self as a queer person at Notre Dame without being knocked down or side-eyed. I can't kiss my girlfriend at the local bar without being called a faggot. I can't wear a Rainbow Love is Love t-shirt to class without long, judgmental looks. I can't educate my classmates on LGBTQ+ issues without being told that this topic has no place at a Catholic law school. You can't have pride without being called too political. I try to be myself and ignore the hate and shame. But this place is a breeding ground for my internalized homophobia. A university cannot support queer students while simultaneously shaming them for being their authentic selves.
I'm grateful, but sometimes it's only because I'm told I should be. I mean, I should be grateful, right? I'm a Black student from a low-income family who was given a very generous scholarship to attend university. The only way to set my many academic and professional achievements that I could have ever afforded an elite institution in the US. Why didn't I feel more grateful? Leading up to my big move to Notre Dame, I found myself seeking out support groups for persons of color, for Black people. In these groups, we share our individual and collective racial trauma and try to comfort each other about the reality of, well, being ourselves. The reality of existing. The reality of not being white in the US or anywhere for that matter. 4%. How is it that a country that was stolen from natives, built on the backs of slaves, and fed by the cuisine and cultures of immigrants is proud that it has shiny universities with a 4% Black student population? That is some messed up shit. And who's gonna fix it? Certainly not the people who benefit. I guess I'll just try to survive a lifetime of structural racism and fix it too. I constantly worry for all the students of color on campus, all the Black staff and faculty members, all the hijab, niqab, burqa, and turban wearers. Is this normal? Sometimes I just want to worry about weak, transient shit. Maybe I dodged a bullet. It'll probably be worse than any other elite university, right? Maybe here, Catholic social traditions will shield me. Maybe that course on anti-racism will change the very rigid structures that make Black students an exception in elite universities. A lifetime of structures that make it hard for people of color to apply or to get in the first place. Maybe on that day when I finally see Notre Dame in my degree certificate, I'll say that the microaggressions and outright racism were worth it. I'm a Black woman. You mean I really have to deal with racism and sexism today? Maybe I should try harder to fit in. If I work really, really hard, maybe I can avoid topics that make white people uncomfortable, hide my third world accent, shield the Blackness of my skin from the police, explain racism and institutional racism to all my white friends and coworkers, ignore the voice in my head that knows my date will never marry someone with dark skin, make no finally mean no, not be afraid to walk home at night, and last but not least, maintain an excessive hair grooming regimen that only vaguely nods to the African continent, but in an attractive and non-threatening way, all while being a model student. And I won't even think about putting on that headscarf and kaftan today, unless my white friends and the Kardashians are doing it now. And even then, maybe it's safer for me if I don't. Why is more than half this world walking around like shit is okay? That if you're okay, it means we all are? Aren't you also terrified by the police? If not, why? Aren't you also angry that Indigenous communities aren't thriving in their own country? If not, why? Don't you also think it's crazy that we get treated differently based on our genitals and the color of our genitals? If not, why? I'm grateful though. No, really, I am. I'm grateful for an education, for food, for shelter, for running water, for electricity, for internet and smartphones, and last but not least, for my friends and family. And who wouldn't want to be told multiple times a day how exotic your accent is, how articulate you are, even though you've been speaking English your whole life, how cool your hair is, outside of the workplace, of course, how beautiful your skin is, as long as it's not too dark, how sexy your curves are, as long as it's still trendy to have an ass, how pretty you are, as long as your racial origins are intriguing enough, how a degree from a good university somehow will make your career and health outcomes equal to that of your white peers, and how your nationality of your parents doesn't make you down with the struggle. Every second of every day, I'm a Black woman. Most days, that means I'm here to entertain you, to give of myself and my culture with no promise of safety or equality, and to prove your commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, so long as I stay in my place. But maybe I should be more grateful for your curiosity and compliments. Maybe I should give you a break from having to think about why shit isn't equal and how it doesn't need to be. Maybe I should smile more often, especially when you tell me to. Maybe I should just be grateful that someone even let me in this university. Right?
If I know 3 people who have been raped on this campus in the past 2 years, and I know that none of their rapists have been disciplined or expelled from the school, determine how many dangerous men is Notre Dame elevating to positions of power by giving them a diploma. Extra credit. By the time I graduate, what is the probability that I have more data points to add to this question? What is the probability that I become one?
Before I knew I was gay, I thought I was just not like other girls. I considered myself a massive feminist, but still wanted to be considered one of the boys when it came to friendship. By the end of my first month of my freshman year, I had curated a large group of co-ed friends from across campus and felt I had beat the Notre Dame single-sex friendship system. After my parents came to visit that first September, my mom told me that one of my friends was the nicest boy she had ever met and that I should marry him one day. I was like, ew, Mom, no, because, gay, but I wasn't out to anyone yet, and I was just starting to come out to myself, so I figured it couldn't hurt to fall deeply in love with him instead of sorting that out. For the next year and a half, I considered the possibility of us getting together. In my mind, it just made sense. We were best friends, we hung out every weekend, got drunk together, and had platonic sleepovers nearly every Saturday night. We also knew everything about each other's sex lives, so he knew that I was disgusted by the concept of performing oral sex on a man. It's just so demeaning, I remember telling him one night. I would have to really love someone in order to perform oral sex on them. Obviously, by someone, I meant him, and I think he knew that, but I can never be sure. As time went by, our sleepovers began to escalate. Instead of sleeping on the futon, I started sleeping in his bed. It was just sleeping, but it soon became clearer to me that our friendship might be about to pivot. But at that point, I still wasn't really sure what I wanted. Okay, it was the Monday before Thanksgiving break, and neither of us had any work to do, so we decided to go out. We were completely drunk by 8 p.m., so we Ubered back to his dorm. I climbed up into his bed on the ladder, as I had done many times before, and I heard him shut off the light and crawl in next to me. But instead of turning away from me like he normally did, I felt his arm sling across my body. My heart skipped a beat, and I turned towards him. "What the fuck?" I asked. "We owe it to ourselves to try, right?" he said. I agreed, and we started kissing. It was okay, but I had built up the moment in my head for so long, and I never enjoyed kissing boys anyways, and it was him, so I kept going. Things proceeded according to the heterosexual code of sexual conduct, and clothes started to come off. Eventually, he got in my hand to the area I feared most. Then he changed. He told me to suck his dick. I said, "I don't think I want to." "Come on, just do it." "Should I?" I don't think I want to." "You're gonna have to do it, eventually." "But don't be a bitch." I was horribly offended, but I didn't know what else to do. He knew this was something that I would only do for someone I really loved, so I figured it meant he had the same feelings. The rest of the experience is permanently blacked out of my memory, but all I remember is that I hated every second of it. The next morning, I felt the strangest combination of joy and shame. It finally happened. We were on the path to marriage. I was straight. But he coerced me into performing oral sex and called me a bitch. Wouldn't I be appalled if the same thing happened to one of my friends? Every time I proudly retold the story, I left out the part where he called me a bitch. Eventually, I told a friend over the phone because I couldn't keep it in anymore. That's coercion, isn't it? I could hear the strain in her voice. "No, we're just friends. We call each other names all the time. That's just our relationship." "Okay," she said. "Just be careful." Over the next few months, I hooked up with him twice more. The first time, I was completely blacked out and have no memory at all. The second, he called me a bitch again, and I told him to stop, but I kept laughing it off. I was able to convince myself it was funny until he put his hands around my neck without consent, and my whole body froze as I screamed, "Stop! Get out of my room!" He stayed, and I learned the next day that he was completely unaware of what he did wrong. He wanted to fix our friendship, but I realized there was nothing left to fix. The words kept swirling around in my brain. "Don't be a bitch," followed by, "That's coercion, isn't it?" Until I realized the truth. I was sexually assaulted by my best friend. but I marched myself down to the UCC a few days later to confirm what I already knew. I told the whole story and didn't shed a single tear until I got to the words, "I'm just so embarrassed." You should know I have a major in gender studies. I'm supposed to know how these things work. And I think I did know that our relationship was wrong the entire time. But now I see that I was using it as a form of self-harm. Justifying my time with him was an excuse to justify my own denial of my sexuality, and it felt easier to suffer than to just be free. Last year, I spent 8 months of lockdown unpacking the 1.5 years of toxicity and trauma that I had ignored, and the 18 years of self-denial before that. I came out to my friends and close family at the end of 2020. Now, I'm in love with a woman, and I'm the happiest I've ever been in my entire life. I don't really know how else to wrap this up with a cute little moral of the story, but I think that's okay. Thanks for listening to my super fucked up coming out story.
Hi, Mom. I often joke about not wanting to be perceived. But that's just because I'm still surprised whenever someone calls me by my name. Or mentions that they were thinking about me the other day. Or recalls something I once did and brings it up in conversation. It still kind of baffles me that you've ever referred to me in the third person. Or that I continue to exist in your mind after I exit the space. I guess that's why I have such a hard time with my pronouns. He is, or she is. Nothing fits because I am Connor sometimes doesn't fit. The simple I am sometimes doesn't fit. Mom, I don't expect you to understand. I know you've been misgendering our cat for years. She's a girl, Mom. And if you can't remember that our cat of 15 years is a she, I don't expect you to understand how I'm a they. If I'm a they. I guess I'm a they. This body is mine, but we're often not in sync. I wrap my arms around myself, fingers digging into bare skin, and whisper, I am allowed to the void. And I am met with ringing silence. I wish you could understand.
Idle hands are the devil's plaything. I wouldn't know about idle hands. My hands have been restless since birth, taking apart pens and rebuilding them in class, doodling in the margins, braiding, unbraiding, rebraiding my own hair. The restlessness translated itself into a nasty nail-biting addiction. But I kicked it when I was young enough that my hands healed into a very normal-looking set. My high school boyfriend would hold them and kiss them, saying that my 2 hands were his favorite part about me. Pretty nice for a teenage boy whose fascination with body parts was well known. But with college search and constant doom came new fears and anxieties, and my restless hands came back to center stage. They cannot go a minute without traveling, fixing my hair, clicking my pen, folding and unfolding the same sticky note until the oil from my fingertips seals the crease. What was worse was the picking. Picking at the acne on my face, on my shoulders, leaving bloody marks across my skin. I would show up to class, puffy and covered in small scabs, little red reminders of my imperfection. I've never had great skin, so this was a pretty easy target. And right back to my hands. I would pick at the skin of my fingers, peeling it off, making it red and tender. I did this constantly, absent-mindedly, when I had nothing else to do. I am bound to my hands, to my skin, yet I abuse it and scar it daily. It took me a long time to realize that this was self-harm. Just not the formalized type that had always been sold to me. Even writing this, I'm tempted to close my hands in on themselves or to scratch my face. My freshman year random roommate, on seeing the state of my hands, interrupted me mid-sentence. I really can't focus looking at that. I closed my hands and felt ashamed. My default stance is one of balled fists. Since then, I've made friends and hoped desperately and naively that they won't notice my bad habits. I've prayed that some other guy will want to hold my hand again, but I'm not foolish enough to think he'll tell me it's the best part of me. My hands have never been idle. I've made sure of that. Hopefully, they can.
Being a dreamer has always been a sign of strength, resilience, and unwavering belief in living the American dream. For these last couple of years, it has not been the same. The process of making America great again has shown people's true negative feelings toward the other. It does not help at all to constantly wonder if I am welcome in the only place I call home. Oftentimes, while scrolling through social media, there are always hateful comments about people like me, or those who benefit from the DACA program. They should have came in the legal way. Why do they get amnesty for a crime? Some more hurtful than others, but they still pile up. I have challenged all these preconceptions about me and have surpassed everyone's expectations from someone like me. From a third world country to the inner city, to Notre Dame, to making more money than my parents do all year, over a summer. Still, I'm not wanted by my peers, no matter what I do, who I help, how I succeed. I wasn't born here. There's nothing I can do about that. It is not an exaggeration to say, but my very existence, my productivity, my livelihood, and my ability to help others is political. So often on this campus I hear, let's agree to disagree on politics. I'm sorry, but I can't agree to disagree with someone who supports tearing my life apart.
My phone lit up with the news while I was in class. My friends started texting me and telling me how excited they were for me. The Pope had voiced support for same-sex civil unions. As soon as I saw, I burst into tears. At first, they were tears of joy. It was the first time I had ever heard a priest, let alone the Pope, say something about gay people that wasn't negative. Then it sank in. And I cried with sadness and frustration. It was the first time I had ever heard a priest say something about gay people that wasn't negative.
I went to Catholic school my entire life. And while no one I ever knew was aggressively homophobic, like some church members are known to be, homosexuality was never really talked about, like in any context whatsoever. Sure, I knew what being gay meant. I knew that it meant a boy that likes boys or a girl that likes girls. I went to middle school after all. I heard all the jokes. But there's a difference between knowing the definition of something and actually understanding what it means. And how could I understand what being gay meant when the topic was completely ignored by everyone around me? I knew a few boys that the other kids whispered about. Boys that checked just enough stereotypes where everyone whispered that they would probably turn out to be gay. But even then, I really didn't know anyone who was out. Especially when it came to lesbian women. As overlooked as gay men were, lesbian women were almost non-existent in the context of schools I went to. So it really never crossed my mind that I might be a lesbian. How could it? When I had not only never met a lesbian woman, but never even seen one on TV or in a movie. I didn't understand what it meant in reality because I had never seen an example. So how was I supposed to recognize it in myself? You can imagine my reaction then, when I started watching Orange is the New Black my senior year of high school. I know, kind of cliche for a sexual awakening, right? Bear with me. While the main couple was extremely dysfunctional and somewhat toxic, I had never been as absorbed in an on-screen romance as I was with theirs. I found myself bookmarking the wiki page dedicated to the relationship, checking it to see what might happen next after each episode. Something extremely out of character for someone who hates spoilers. I followed Instagram accounts dedicated to their relationship, watched mashup videos of their best moments, rewatched their best scenes, anything I could do to expose myself more to their relationship. I had never seen anything like it. And I had never reacted to something more strongly in my entire life. I told myself it was the great writing of the show. And don't get me wrong, while I do think the show is great for a lot of reasons, the writing was not what had initially got my attention. Soon after I finished the series, I started going down rabbit holes on my Instagram Explore page, trying to find new information or art or videos of the couple that I hadn't seen before. I felt like an addict, trying to find some sort of substitute to satisfy my withdrawal. After a while, Instagram must have gotten tired of watching me click on these same 4 posts, so it started suggesting new shows to me. All of them had lesbian main characters.
I told myself I needed something new to watch anyways. That the fact that these shows also had lesbian main characters just meant that I enjoyed representative media, that I wasn't homophobic. But it didn't stop there. I tore through Netflix and Hulu, following a similar pattern. It got to the point where I was not only taking suggestions from Instagram, but actively searching through the LGBTQ+ sections of streaming services and skipping through shows where lesbians weren't the main characters, and only watching their scenes. But still, I told myself that I just watched a lot of TV, that I just thought these romances were better written. Anything I could do to give myself some sort of excuse. Because how could I be gay? I was now in college and had yet to meet anyone who identified as a lesbian. Gay boys, sure, I knew plenty. But gay girls? Not so much. And according to everyone I knew in high school, being a lesbian was something to whisper about the girl with short hair on an opposing basketball team. Not a characteristic of anyone I knew, personally. After binging show after show, it wasn't long until I ran out of excuses for myself and just started ignoring the real reason I liked watching all of these shows. Because I could actually see myself in the characters involved in these relationships. Right around that time, Instagram stopped suggesting posts of fictional lesbian couples and just started suggesting posts of real ones. Couples that had travel blogs, accounts dedicated to lesbian visibility, influencers, real people. It was like Instagram was trying to throw me a hint, nudge me in the right direction. And after spending hours scrolling through these posts of real people, searching for some kind of sign or reassurance or permission, I started to take the hint. I started to realize that this might actually be my truth. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Because the schools I went to ignored the LGBTQ community. Because it took me until I was 18 years old to find even a fictionalized representation of a lesbian couple. Because the word gay was constantly associated with someone who was different, someone who I could not realistically be. Instagram knew I was gay before I did.
I walked into the small room, subtly clutching my stomach, my face contorting in pain and the smell of antiseptic. Remembering all the times I wished I never stepped a foot in the same office. I looked into her eyes as she asked me routine questions, and I understood she needed to know what direction the appointment was going to take. Then she asked me, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much pain are you in? I looked into her eyes as I softly muttered 10. In disbelief, she asked me if I was sure. Now, I know it's not rocket science, but I do know what I'm feeling. It's just that you don't look like... She cleared her throat, effectively covering what was sure to spill out of her mouth. An excuse as to why she thought I was not in as much pain. An excuse as to why she thought she had the right to assume my pain, or rather how much pain I could take. But I was not buying it, not this time. I was tired of having to justify my pain. I was tired of being told it was nothing. I was tired of putting my body through the torture. See, I could tell her how Black women are 12 times more likely to die during childbirth. How a 2019 study discovered that we are 40% less likely to receive pain medication. How a 2016 study discovered that
first and second year med school students thought we had thicker skin. I could tell her how her implicit racial bias is hurting me, how it hurt her other Black patients before me, how it will hurt her future Black patients. But the pain I'm in simply does not allow me to speak. So I continue clutching my stomach, wondering what would have made her believe me, wondering whether she is aware of the pain slicing away at me, of the tears about to cascade down my face. I sit down, wondering when the appointment will be over.
I had been feeling sick for a few days and was trying to figure out which dining hall gave me food poisoning when it hit me. Girls panic and fear that you might be pregnant every time you have sex, but it couldn't be. We were careful, and although Plan A had failed, Plan B had surely worked. 2 pregnancy tests and a clinic visit confirmed it hadn't. I had considered what I would do if I ever found myself in this situation, but when it ceased to be a hypothetical situation, making a decision proved much harder. So much went through my mind. I mean, I'm 21. I'm so close to finishing college. Can I do this? I just signed a lease for an apartment next year. My parents are gonna kill me. What am I supposed to tell my little brother? Should I tell my boyfriend? Whatever happens, I'm gonna be okay. I have to be. I also really need to study for that exam. I went over all the options again and again. I knew I could not go through with adoption. If I carried out the pregnancy, I couldn't live with giving the baby up. No, if I chose to continue the pregnancy, I would keep it. But I wasn't ready for that. If I chose to have children in the future, it would be when I was able to provide for them with the absolute best of me. That meant having a career and a stable environment for them to live in and an income that would cover all of their needs. As a first-generation Latina, I was supposed to eliminate a cycle of poverty, not perpetuate it. I mean, my parents have so many dreams for me. I have so many dreams for me. I saw signs on bathroom stalls talking about, resources Notre Dame offers in case of an unplanned pregnancy. But honestly, I did not want the university involved. I figured they would not be much help. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've never had a pregnant classmate in any of my lectures. And if breaking parietals gets you in trouble, imagine this. So I decided to go to Planned Parenthood. And they made me an appointment at a place an hour away. A week later, my boyfriend and I made the trip. When I get nervous or anxious, I start shaking. Boy, was I shaking. I had to get a medical abortion because I haven't been able to keep down anything for the past month, so the pill was a gamble. It wasn't too painful. I was told to think of my happy place. But all I could do was smile and try to convince them they were comforting me while doing my best to keep my mind blank. That night, I had some soup from ABP, and to this day, that is the greatest soup I have ever had. Because it was the first food I'd been able to keep down after weeks of endless morning and afternoon and evening sickness. My boyfriend and I broke up shortly after. He had been incredibly supportive, but the situation just placed a lot of pressure on a very new relationship. As my body was adjusting to all the changes, I went through a lot of ups and downs. I binged Friends for comfort. And I cried every night for about a month. I was trying to return to normal, and it appeared as though I was succeeding. I ate all my favorite foods, and I got dressed up to go out with friends, and I danced, and I laughed, and I enjoyed myself. But when I was alone, I fell apart. I wasn't able to keep the act up for long. I ended up booking a flight home and hoping my professors would let me take my finals online. Within 2 hours of being home, I told my mom, and she cried with me. She was also incredibly supportive, but told me that we couldn't tell my dad. I have no doubt he would have been supportive, but I also know it would break his heart. I spent that summer doing anything I could to distract myself. I even managed to get appendicitis. This was especially distracting. My mistake was believing that not dealing with my feelings meant that I was being strong. My wake-up call was when I returned to campus and caught a glimpse of my ex, which caused me to become short of breath and begin shaking. It happened when I saw his friends, too. When I finally went to the UCC and made my counselor promise that she abided by HIPAA about 3 times, she told me that I was experiencing grief and PTSD. I had associated the pain of what had happened with them, and so seeing them made me relive everything. My solution was just to pretend like they didn't exist, which I will admit was a rude method of self-preservation. Eventually, I learned not to suppress my emotions. I was in a lot of pain over what I had experienced. Now, let me be clear, I was not ashamed, nor am I now. I know I made the right decision for me. But it was never a choice that I wanted to have to make. Some women who have abortions can go back to their lives normally immediately after, but I just wasn't one of them. It took a lot of tears and revisiting painful memories and time to get to where I am today. I don't think about it every day anymore. Abortion is so tied to everything about being a woman in the society that we live in that it makes it very difficult to realize it is not a defining feature of those who choose it. I'm very fortunate in the friend department. I don't know if I would have made it without their love and unconditional support. As painful as the situation was, I kept going because what else was I supposed to do? I know abortion at Notre Dame is a topic that inspires heavy debate, but I just wish people realize that it's not just a debate. It's something that happens in our little golden bubble. It's abortion. It's a thing that happens everywhere. Each woman's story is different and it is valid and it does not deserve to be watered down by polarizing politics. So go ahead, foster your dialogue, Notre Dame. And to my girls who have had abortions, people may label you, but it's how you overcome those labels that matters.
You complain about how expensive the brown apple of the ground is. But tell me, white-collar Karen, do you know what the true price of that commodity is? Start with the 4 a.m. alarm clock, then add the muddy boots squared, coming up the merely lit front doorsteps encircled by bloodthirsty vampires at the end of the day. Multiply that by 6, sometimes 7. Count the basketball and soccer games, dance performances, and school banquets, tripled for every child. Add the bean and rice burritos wrapped in tin foil, resting on the front ledge of the tractor. Multiply by the prayers that the burning heat of the sun chooses to prey on those instead of the already dark brown skin. Attach to your number the pounds lost during harvest because the long sleeve and puma cap are preferred to the skin that attracts the sun and the cold men. Add the tears of frustration, of the abuse and misappreciation. Fuck it! Make it to the 4th power for every different employer behind it. Don't deduct holidays or 3-day weekends because those don't fit in this equation. Oh, most importantly, carry over the fear of not returning to your family every day you leave the house. Because someone in a white collar shirt stupidly believes that the price of the fruit of your labor, of your sweat, blood, tears, and age is too high.
I can't find the words, he said. I can't find the nerve, she said. I will never know your pain, he said. I will never pretend or feign, she said. I'm not being offensive too, he said. I'm not against you, she said. I do not live a life of fear, he said. I do not weaponize my tears, she said. I know you people are mad, he said. I know you don't really know your dad, she said. I really think it's okay to say it in a song, he said. I really think calling the cops is not wrong, she said. I have had it bad too, he said. I have respect for red, white, and blue, she said. I think if you paid attention, he said, I think you don't get my intention, she said. He said, not everything's about race. She said, speaking up is just not my place. They said, I'm not racist, you know. So I said, leave me the fuck alone. I'm tired of the fragility you've shown. I'm tired of police brutality, white supremacy, systemic and institutionalized racism being condoned. Shit, honestly, I'm tired of you speaking to me in that condescending tone. So I said, acknowledge your shit and actively, purposefully unlearn and do the work. Or again, leave me the fuck alone. Because the murder of Black lives in America is terrorist violence. And you sitting there, living like it's just another day, ignoring the killings and protests and demonstrations and selective silence, confirms what you said and what I thought I heard. You're okay during the crisis. You're cool with just posting the words. And that you're fine. You're good living in your wasted whiteness.
Dear Professor, my apologies for the late response. I hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for reminding me about my late assignments. The sight of your name in my inbox immediately made me want to kill myself, which helped. I appreciate the nudge. I plan on working to catch up on the course as soon as the sound of my mother's worried voice over the phone convinces me to get up off the floor and give one more shot at life. It's quite a crazy semester, as you know. I hope you don't take me falling behind the course as laziness. I certainly don't want to make excuses, but I've been having a difficult time. Lately, I'm so miserable I don't know who to talk to. Last night, I felt like doing something crazy, so I missed another Sakai deadline. I was one button away from calling an emergency hotline, but I figured it'd probably be best if I stay in my room, alone, since I can't really afford an ambulance ride. Plus, I'm sure the hospital gets enough traffic without me anyways, if you know what I mean. Smiley face. Don't worry, this happens incredibly often. It's really my fault for not acclimating to my own instability. Instead of going to the hospital and disappearing for an undetermined number of weeks, I spent the rest of the night weeping and trying to figure out if my insurance covers mental health and patient care. It probably doesn't. I'll admit, it was stupid of me to think poor people deserve to live long, fulfilling lives. I guess the naivety of my youth hasn't fully worn off yet. Don't worry, it's wearing remarkably thin. Last night, I wept so much I could hardly open my eyes in the morning. I wonder if my face will peel off if I did that again today. No one would know behind the mask anyway. Just some pandemic humor. Anyways, it's probably best that I fell asleep in the middle of my little episode last night. My parents would be pretty broken up to find a psychiatric hospital bill in their mailbox. Did I mention we have no money? They might have to pull me out of school. And believe me, that is no way for me to get our coursework done. I can imagine that this is concerning information. But don't worry, I have many wonderful friends. Most of them can't even offer me so much as a hug right now because of the whole global pandemic thing. But it's fine. I get the sense that they're afraid of me. But I let the promise of getting to hug them before I graduate keep me going. But that promise is looking more improbable each day. Heart emoji. I really don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. So instead of talking about my dread, we just do other things like watercolor or get drunk. Last week, I painted a maple tree. It was nothing remarkable. And you're probably wondering how I had time for watercoloring and not for doing my homework. And my answer would have to be, fuck you. Respectfully, of course. I'm trying to tell you that every other day I feel like I'm dying. And on the days in between, I feel like I'm already dead. Yes, my dread is on block schedule. Go ahead and report me to some other adult whose job it is to pretend to care for me. And then maybe you can say you did everything in your power to be there for me, and I could never use feeling helpless as an academic excuse again. At the very least, I hope my transparency with you is remotely entertaining. If there's one thing I learned at this university, it's that no matter how strongly I feel like I deserve rights, those who have power over me will always find a way to call me brave or
resilient, and leave me to drown. Only I won't drown, because I'm just lucky to be here. Sorry again for the late response. All the best. Me.
The best definition of original sin that I've heard of is that rather than being an inclination to sin, it's that we're born into a network of broken relationships. We're exposed to this brokenness every moment, every day, and there's no amount of distance that will fully protect us from it. We take risks. We decide what we consider to be safe in terms of the vulnerability we offer each other, but we're breathing in infected air whenever we talk to another human being. And just as there are a lot of different kinds of diseases, there are a lot of different kinds of casualties too. If I wanted to be poetic or dramatic, which I don't, I'd say that this is the story of the death of my innocence. Maybe it was on its last legs anyways. Hard to believe it lasted 22 years, but regardless, the part of me that could, at least metaphorically, breathe freely, forget about the risk of infection, is gone. I went to one party this semester. It was a Friday night in November. That's about all the specificity I can give without making this into a report. And it wasn't even a party, really. Just a few friends from my major, all mostly masked, except to take sips of vodka. And those masks gradually fell away as the night wore on and the alcohol made us forgetful. It was a casual kind of recklessness, not meant to be dangerous. I'd meant to drive myself home that night, but it had been such a long semester, and I was so overjoyed at being able to see my friends, at having finished all those essays, at having gotten through it all, that I had a drink. And then two. And then several, lost in the celebration and caught up in the delight of talking and laughing with other people, intoxicated at the slightest taste of the freedom I hadn't felt for months. It became clear pretty quickly that it wouldn't be safe for me to drive home. So, my friend, one of the hosts, offered me his couch for the night and a few more drinks for good measure. And I figured it'd be fine. I'd sleep for a few hours and then, newly sobered up, but probably hungover, drive away in the morning, back to the real world after a night of relative rest. It gets blurry around 2 a.m. when people start to head home, and I stayed to chat and got ready to crash on the couch. I can't remember how I got to be alone with him, or how his arm is now around my shoulders, vice-like. And I'm not sure I enjoy, but I haven't been touched in so long, and we're talking about exes and heartbreaks, and I suppose this is meant to be a moment of inebriated intimacy, of vulnerability. And then his lips are on mine, and I don't think I want this. I'm confused about how it's happening. Did I give him the wrong signals? And he asked if I want to go to his room, something almost threatening in his tone. My room or the couch, which do you want? I ask him for a pillow, and he says there's some on his bed, and repeats his offer, and I say, I don't know, because I don't know. I'm still so confused, but he's taking my hand, and then somehow I'm lying on my back in his bed. The few seconds of walking to his room are obscured, and I'm scared. But my heart won't beat in time with the fear. It's still slowed
I did drink. Maybe I did say yes somehow. Or at least I didn't say no. He keeps asking if it's okay as he takes off my sweater and unzips my jeans, and I keep whispering, slurring, I don't know. I don't know. And I muster up the energy to ask him if this means anything, if he's into me or something, trying to make meaning of it, to muster up any warmth or passion, but he just laughs. Cold as ice, and mutters, Jesus, I didn't think you were this drunk. Doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. It just fades to darkness until the rising sun leaves me out. I lay there in his blankets with his arms still locked around me, and in the light of the morning, I've never felt more naked, more exposed. My body feels wretched. Every inch of my skin and inside of me too, I feel wretched. And I'm thinking now about the virus, about what it means to be an unwilling host, to be penetrated and covered, submerged in disease, drowning in the fear that comes from a loss of control. To know that your flesh is no longer your own. Even statistically speaking, I can't make sense of it. It's 1 in 4 college-age women, but it's supposed to be most risky freshman year when you're naively going to strangers' house parties, not when you're older and hanging out with people that you trust. I'm not even sure if this counts as anything. Gradually, I disentangle myself from the covers and his arms. I pull my sweater on over my head and tug on my jeans as he watches. Hung over, but still hungry, and that's the moment the realization slams into me and whatever was still intact inside of me shatters, suddenly and silently. He walks me out to my car, and we agree not to talk about it, and I know he doesn't know, doesn't realize, or at least I hope to God he doesn't understand what he's done, because to do that knowingly would make him more monster than human. I can't stop shaking. Feverish. It was my fault. I shouldn't be feeling this way. I shouldn't have exposed myself. I thought it was safe. I meant to drive home. It was just a hookup. Maybe I'd said yes. There's nothing poetic about this. No op-ed worthy insights, not even any good comparisons between the virus and the patriarchy or whatever shit I could try to come up with. I'm just another casualty that survived. I'll walk around with aching lungs, unable to breathe. I am simultaneously infected and already dead. I'm grateful now for the 6 feet of distance from everyone else. There might as well be 6 feet of dirt over my head. I'm grateful too for the anonymity of masks that hide the ways I've become less human. I'm no longer bound to the fragility of innocence. I am easy to touch. I'm damaged goods you can just toss around at will. No need to worry about breaking someone that's already broken. I'd like to try to end with hope. Hope that someday I won't need the distance anymore. I'm writing my own epitaph here to prove, maybe, that nothing is set in stone. I found in my research that if there's a cure to any of this, it's contact with others.
I can kiss a different guy, enjoy being able to say yes knowingly. I can tell my friends I can let them hurt with me, no herd immunity in this kind of pain, but there's comfort in the knowledge that even these networks of broken relationships can still hold me. And I can speak these words. They cost me something. With every sentence I give you another inch of skin to touch, a new kind of exposure, but every time I say it out loud, I breathe in order to do so. I use the lungs that I thought were dead.